Imagine paying $12,000 for a first-class ticket only to be treated like you don't belong. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Olivia Banks stood motionless at the priority boarding gate, her black titanium boarding pass gripped firmly between manicured fingers. At 45, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had broken every barrier placed before her. As CEO of Horizon Technologies, she'd transformed a struggling startup into a billion-dollar AI powerhouse. Tonight's flight from New York to Los Angeles should have been routine. 6 hours of peace before tomorrow's groundbreaking partnership announcement that would revolutionize the tech industry. But from the moment she'd approached the first-class lane, something had shifted in the air. Before we dive deeper into this shocking true story, hit that like button. Drop your city in the comments. If you've ever faced discrimination while traveling, and subscribe with notifications on, because the twist at 35,000 feet will leave you absolutely speechless. The flight attendant's eyes had narrowed slightly, a flash of something unspoken passing across her face as she scanned Olivia from head to toe. The name tag read Rebecca Wilson, and her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. What happened next would not only change one flight, but would send shockwaves through an entire industry. John F. Kennedy International Airport hummed with the controlled chaos of a Friday evening. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, a sleek Aurora Airlines jet gleamed under the terminal lights, its midnight blue fuselage emblazoned with a silver comet streak. Flight 782 to Los Angeles was boarding in 40 minutes, and the premium lounge buzzed with quiet conversation and the soft clink of glassware. Olivia Banks sat slightly apart from the other passengers, her attention divided between her tablet and the bustling concourse beyond the glass walls. Her charcoal gray suit was impeccably tailored, a single platinum pin, Horizon Technologies logo, gleaming on her lapel. She'd chosen to travel light, one carry-on containing her presentation materials and a change of clothes for tomorrow's meeting. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with expensive perfume in the climate-controlled air. Around her, mostly white executives tapped at laptops or murmured into phones, occasionally glancing at her with that momentary double-take she'd grown accustomed to, the subtle recalibration that happened when they realized who she was. She scrolled through the final slides of her keynote address, mentally rehearsing key points. The partnership with West Coast Innovations would be the largest in her company's history, a $2.8 billion deal that would integrate Horizon's breakthrough AI technology into everyday consumer products. The tech world was buzzing with speculation, and reporters would be waiting the moment she touched down in Los Angeles. Ms. Banks. A lounge attendant appeared with a fresh, sparkling water. Your flight will begin boarding in 20 minutes. Is there anything else you need before departure? I'm all set. Thank you, Olivia replied with a warm smile. As the attendant walked away, Olivia's phone vibrated with a text from Amanda Foster, her chief of staff. Confirmation from West Coast. All executives will attend tomorrow's announcement. Press coverage confirmed from WSJ Bloomberg and TechCrunch. You ready for this? Olivia typed a quick reply. Always. Heading to gate soon. Talk tomorrow. She tucked the phone into her jacket pocket and gazed briefly at her reflection in the darkened window. 15 years ago, when she'd first pitched her AI concept to investors, one had told her bluntly that women like her weren't cut out for tech leadership. She'd used those words as fuel building Horizon Technologies from a 4-person team in a cramped office to a global leader with over 3,000 employees. The memory triggered a flashback. Olivia, at 30, sitting across from 5 white male investors. One of them, a silver-haired man with an expensive watch, leaning forward with a patronizing smile. Ms. Banks, your enthusiasm is admirable, but let's be practical. This industry requires technical expertise and aggressive leadership. Perhaps you'd be better suited to marketing or diversity initiatives, somewhere your unique perspective would be more valuable. The others had nodded, satisfied with this seemingly reasonable suggestion. Olivia had felt her throat tighten, fury rising like bile, but instead of the angry outburst they clearly expected, she'd opened her laptop. "Gentlemen, let me show you the working prototype I built myself." She'd launched the program, an early version of the AI that would eventually transform global customer service. "While you were questioning my technical qualifications, I was coding this. Now, shall we discuss investment terms, or would you prefer to explain to your board why you passed on what will become the industry standard?" 3 of the 5 had invested that day. None of them still served on her board. The memory brought a slight smile to her lips. She'd learned long ago that success was the best response to doubt. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. "Let your excellence be so loud they can't hear their prejudice." Gathering her belongings, Olivia made her way through the lounge and into the main terminal. The boarding gate for Flight 782 was already filling with passengers. She checked her watch. Still 15 minutes before first-class boarding would begin. Perfect timing. As she approached the priority waiting area, several passengers looked up, a few with flickers of recognition in their eyes. Horizon's latest breakthrough had put Olivia on the cover of Business Innovator magazine last month. She acknowledged the glances with polite nods but maintained her privacy, taking a seat slightly removed from the others. The gate agent announced pre-boarding for passengers needing assistance. Olivia watched as families with small children and elderly travelers were helped onto the jet bridge. She found herself thinking about the journey ahead. Not just the 6-hour flight, but the monumental step Horizon Technologies would take tomorrow. Years of research, countless late nights, and unwavering determination had led to this moment. The speakers crackled again. "Aurora Airlines Flight 782 to Los Angeles is now boarding first-class passengers. Please have your boarding passes ready." Olivia rose smoothly, gathering her carry-on. As she approached the priority boarding lane, she felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere, something in the gate agent's expression that she'd seen countless times before. A look that asked without words, "Do you really belong here? First-class boarding is beginning now. Are you certain this is your group?" The gate agent's voice carried a hint of skepticism, her eyes flicking briefly to Olivia's boarding pass before returning to her face. Rebecca Wilson stood behind the counter, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, uniform pressed to perfection. Her smile was professional but cold like polished marble. Around 40, she carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to authority. "Yes, I'm in seat 2A, Olivia replied evenly, extending her black titanium boarding pass. Rebecca took the pass, holding it a beat longer than necessary. "This is a premium executive seat," she said, voice lilting with subtle emphasis. "Usually reserved for our highest-tier frequent flyers." "I'm aware." Olivia's tone remained neutral, neither defensive nor confrontational. Years in boardrooms had taught her that emotional reactions only fed into others' expectations. Behind her, the first-class line had grown. A tall man in a navy suit glanced up from his phone, eyebrows slightly raised at the exchange. An elderly couple exchanged whispers. The atmosphere tensed like stretched fabric. "Let me just verify this in our system," Rebecca continued, tapping her screen deliberately. "We've had some mix-ups recently." The scanner emitted a clear green confirmation. Rebecca's smile tightened fractionally. "It seems your ticket is valid. Go ahead." As Olivia moved to step past, Rebecca leaned slightly forward. "Just so you know, our first-class cabin does maintain certain standards for all passengers." Her gaze flickered briefly over Olivia's attire. The implication hung in the air, weightless yet heavy. Several nearby passengers shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to listen while catching every word. "I believe I'll manage," Olivia replied, her voice cool but composed. She rolled her carry-on forward, conscious of eyes following her progress. As she entered the jet bridge, a man fell into step beside her, early 40s with dark hair and thoughtful eyes. He carried a leather briefcase and wore a charcoal suit that spoke of quiet professionalism. Always interesting how some people interpret customer service, he commented, voice low enough for only Olivia to hear. She glanced at him, measuring his intention. James Rodriguez, he offered with a slight nod. Looks like we're neighbors for the flight. I'm in 2B. Olivia Banks, she replied simply, not elaborating further. I know, he said, then noting her raised eyebrow. The Horizon AI speech recognition software. Game-changing work. My firm has implemented it in our legal research division. The conversation paused as they reached the aircraft door. A different flight attendant, younger with a name tag reading Nicole, greeted them with genuine warmth. Welcome aboard Flight 782. First class is to your right. The cabin gleamed with soft lighting, the scent of leather and subtle cologne hanging in the air. 12 spacious seats were arranged in a 1-to-1 configuration, offering both privacy and luxury. Olivia stowed her carry-on and settled into 2A, a window seat with direct aisle access. James took his place beside her across the small divider. Looking forward to a peaceful flight, he commented, arranging his belongings. Olivia nodded in agreement, though a subtle tension remained between her shoulders. 15 years as a black woman in the tech industry had taught her to recognize the preliminary tremors before an earthquake of prejudice. The gate interaction with Rebecca had carried all the warning signs. Her mind flashed back to a similar moment 3 years ago. A first-class lounge in Singapore where a staff member had insisted she was in the wrong place, even after seeing her credentials. That day, she'd been too tired to challenge it, simply walking away to avoid conflict. The memory had stayed with her, a small, sharp stone in her shoe. A movement at the cabin entrance caught her attention. Rebecca Wilson had boarded the plane and was scanning the first-class section. Her gaze landed on Olivia, eyes narrowing fractionally. She approached with measured steps, tablet in hand. Ms. Banks, I need to verify your boarding pass again, she said, voice pitched to carry across the quiet cabin. We've had some seating irregularities tonight. Several passengers looked up. James Rodriguez paused in opening his laptop. You verified it at the gate? Olivia replied calmly. Is there a specific concern? Rebecca's smile tightened. Just a routine check. May I see your boarding pass again? Without argument. Olivia retrieved the titanium card and handed it over. Rebecca scanned it, the green confirmation beeping clearly in the hushed cabin. Satisfied, Olivia asked quietly. Rebecca didn't answer directly. Instead, she tilted her head slightly. Seat 2A is typically reserved for our Diamond Elite members. Are you new to our loyalty program? I purchased the ticket directly, Olivia replied. Is there a problem with that? From the row behind, a young Hispanic woman looked up from her phone, her expression shifting from casual interest to focused attention. Her dark eyes moved between Olivia and Rebecca, quietly observing. Of course not, Rebecca said, smile fixed in place. It's just unusual to see this seat purchased outright rather than through corporate status. Was this booked through an assistant, perhaps? The question hung in the air. Loaded, pointed, designed to create distance and difference. I don't believe my booking method is relevant to the validity of my ticket, Olivia stated, her tone pleasant but firm. Which you've now verified twice. James Rodriguez cleared his throat softly. Is there a reason we're delaying departure with redundant checks? Rebecca's attention snapped to him. Sir, I'm simply ensuring everything is in order. By questioning the same passenger twice, he pressed his expression professional but questioning. Rebecca's posture stiffened. I'll be right back with pre-departure beverages, she said, retreating toward the galley. The young woman behind Olivia leaned forward slightly. That was wild, she murmured. I've never seen someone's ticket checked twice like that. Olivia turned slightly. The woman appeared to be in her mid-20s with warm brown eyes and an open expression. Sofia Gonzalez, she introduced herself. And for what it's worth, I'm recording a travel vlog. That whole interaction is definitely going in with a chapter called Things That Don't Happen to White Passengers. Before Olivia could respond, Rebecca returned with a tray of champagne flutes. She served James, first setting the crystal glass on his side table with practiced elegance. Then she turned to Olivia, extending a glass with noticeably less care. As she placed it down, a splash of champagne spilled onto the armrest. "Turbulence," Rebecca said without apology, not offering to clean the spill. Sophia's phone remained casually angled upward, its recording light blinking steadily. The first-class cabin of Flight 782 embodied understated luxury. Soft cream leather seats reclined to fully flat beds, each with its own privacy shell. Wood grain panels and brushed metal accents caught the warm cabin lighting. The air carried hints of sandalwood and fresh linen, designed to evoke comfort and exclusivity. Olivia dabbed at the spilled champagne with a napkin, her movements unhurried and deliberate. She'd encountered variations of Rebecca Wilson throughout her career. People who wielded small powers with surgical precision, creating paper cuts of indignity that individually seemed too minor to challenge. At the front galley, Nicole Anderson arranged welcome amenities, occasionally glancing toward Rebecca with barely concealed discomfort. In her mid-30s, with auburn hair and kind eyes, Nicole carried herself with professional efficiency, but lacked Rebecca's sharp edges. Captain Thomas Peterson emerged briefly from the cockpit, mid-50s, silver-haired, with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to command. He greeted several first-class passengers by name, nodded to others, and exchanged a few quiet words with Rebecca before returning to flight preparations. Another flight attendant moved through the cabin. Michael Ramirez, according to his name badge. Around 30, with warm brown skin and a genuine smile, he distributed hot towels with quiet efficiency, pausing briefly at each seat. "Ms. Banks," he said, offering a towel to Olivia with professional courtesy. "Welcome aboard. Is there anything specific you need before takeoff? I'm all set. Thank you," Olivia replied. Michael nodded and continued his service. As he passed Rebecca near the galley, she murmured something that made him glance back toward Olivia, his expression shifting momentarily before he masked it with professional neutrality. Olivia noted the interaction without reacting. She'd developed a radar for these moments. The subtle exchanges, the shifted glances, the unspoken communications that often preceded more overt actions. The scene triggered a memory. 10 years ago, early in Horizon's growth, she'd flown to a venture capital meeting in Boston. The flight attendant had repeatedly addressed the white male CFO sitting beside her, assuming he was the company founder, despite Olivia clearly stating her position. By the third time it happened, her CFO had become so uncomfortable, he'd switched seats with someone in business class. That evening alone in her hotel room, Olivia had wept. Not from the slight itself, but from bone-deep exhaustion of constantly having to assert her existence. It was the last time she'd cried over such incidents. The next morning, she'd drafted the first version of what would become Horizon's institutional accountability protocols, systems designed to address discrimination at structural levels, rather than as isolated incidents. The memory dissolved as James Rodriguez settled more comfortably in 2B, opening his laptop. Litigation specialist, he mentioned, casually catching Olivia's glance. Corporate law with a focus on discrimination cases. "Interesting coincidence," Olivia commented. James smiled slightly. "Is it?" He turned his attention to his screen but added quietly, "I fly this route twice monthly. Never been asked to verify my ticket after boarding. Not once in 3 years." The cabin continued filling with business-class passengers moving toward the rear. A middle-aged white man in an expensive suit paused by Olivia's seat, doing a visible double-take before continuing to his own row. Near the front, Rebecca watched the interaction with something like satisfaction in her eyes. Sophia Gonzalez had settled into 3A, her phone now connected to the aircraft Wi-Fi. "Already getting comments on my story," she murmured, leaning slightly forward. People are asking if I'm still recording. Are you? Olivia asked, voice neutral. Just audio now, Sophia confirmed. I run a travel channel focused on experiences of people of color in premium cabins. Started it after being asked if I was in the right line 3 flights in a row. She hesitated, then added, Would you mind if I kept documenting? This feels important. Olivia considered the request. I have no objection to you recording your own experience, she said carefully. As the final passengers boarded, Olivia noticed a man in a tailored gray suit taking seat 4C. Around 50, with closely cropped hair and observant eyes, he carried himself with the alert posture of someone accustomed to surveillance. His gaze swept the cabin in a practiced pattern before settling briefly on Olivia. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second, a moment of mutual recognition that neither acknowledged outwardly. Rebecca returned to Olivia's seat, her professional smile firmly in place. Ms. Banks will be departing shortly. The captain has asked me to verify that all electronic devices are in airplane mode. Of course, Olivia replied, holding up her phone to show the airplane mode was already activated. Rebecca lingered. That's an interesting watch, she commented, eyeing the sleek black timepiece on Olivia's wrist. Is it recording something? The question hung in the air, pointed accusatory. It's a standard smartwatch, Olivia replied evenly. It monitors heart rate and steps like most fitness devices. Rebecca's eyes narrowed slightly. Some devices can record conversations without consent. That would violate our privacy policies. I'm aware of privacy laws, Olivia said. My watch isn't recording anything. The statement wasn't entirely accurate. The watch, a prototype developed by Horizon's wearable tech division, did have recording capabilities activated by a specific gesture pattern. Olivia had initiated this protocol shortly after boarding a precautionary measure she'd learned to take in potentially problematic situations. If you say so, Rebecca replied, doubt evident in her tone. She moved away to continue her preparations, stopping to chat warmly with a white passenger in the first row. Nicole approached with fresh napkins. Let me help with that spill, she offered, quietly, quickly cleaning the armrest. Would you like a refill? Thank you, that would be nice, Olivia replied. As Nicole worked, she kept her voice low. I apologize for any discomfort. If you need anything during the flight, please don't hesitate to ask me directly. The subtle message wasn't lost on Olivia. Nicole was establishing herself as separate from Rebecca's behavior, a small but significant act in the confined hierarchy of the aircraft. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the boarding door closed. Captain Peterson's voice came over the intercom, welcoming everyone aboard Flight 782 to Los Angeles, promising smooth conditions and an on-time arrival. The safety demonstration began Rebecca performing her role with mechanical precision, her eyes occasionally drifting toward Olivia's seat with barely concealed scrutiny. As the aircraft pushed back from the gate, Olivia's phone vibrated once, a final message before losing signal. Enjoy your flight. We're monitoring. The brief text from Amanda Foster carried layers of meaning that settled Olivia's mind. Whatever happened on this flight, her team had her back. She closed her eyes briefly as the engines roared to life, mentally preparing for whatever came next. Would you care for another glass of champagne? Rebecca's voice cut through the steady hum of the engines as the aircraft reached cruising altitude. The seatbelt sign had just been switched off, and the first-class cabin settled into the rhythm of long-haul comfort. No, thank you, Olivia replied, focusing on her tablet where she reviewed presentation notes for tomorrow's announcement. Rebecca didn't move away. I noticed you barely touched your first glass. Was there something wrong with it? Perhaps you prefer a different beverage. We have an exclusive selection available only in first class. The emphasis on exclusive hung in the air, a subtle reminder of boundaries and belonging. The champagne was fine, Olivia said. I simply don't drink much before important meetings. I see, Rebecca's smile remained fixed. We do have passengers who aren't accustomed to our premium offerings. Some find it overwhelming. From 2B. James Rodriguez looked up sharply from his laptop. His expression remained neutral, but his attention had clearly shifted to the interaction. I assure you I'm quite comfortable. Olivia stated, her tone pleasant but firm. Of course, Rebecca replied, her voice carrying a hint of disbelief. We just want to ensure all passengers meet the standards our regular first-class travelers expect. The comment, loaded with implication, caused several nearby passengers to look up. Sofia Gonzalez in 3A adjusted her position slightly, ensuring her phone's microphone remained unobstructed. And what standards would those be, exactly? Olivia asked, her voice level. Rebecca's smile tightened. Professional decorum, appropriate attire, certain behavioral expectations. Her gaze flickered briefly over Olivia's tailored suit as if finding it somehow lacking. My ticket grants me access to this cabin, Olivia stated calmly. Not my clothing, not my demeanor, and certainly not your assessment of whether I belong. Rebecca's expression hardened momentarily before she composed herself. I'll return shortly with dinner menus, she said, briskly turning away. As she retreated to the galley, Nicole approached with fresh water for Olivia's glass. I apologize for the intrusion, she said quietly, her eyes conveying genuine regret. From behind, Sophia leaned forward slightly. This is unreal, she whispered. My followers are blowing up the comments. You're handling it like a pro. Sometimes silence is the most powerful response, Olivia said. Until it isn't, James Rodriguez commented from across the aisle, his voice pitched for only their small circle to hear. Documentation matters in situations like this. Olivia nodded slightly, acknowledging his point without elaborating. She was acutely aware of the careful balance required, responding firmly enough to establish boundaries without providing fuel for escalation. At the front of the cabin, Rebecca huddled with Captain Peterson, their conversation just beyond earshot. The captain glanced toward Olivia's seat, his expression unreadable before he nodded and returned to the cockpit. A memory surfaced unbidden. Olivia, at 26, attending her first tech conference as Horizon's founder. She'd approached a networking event, credentials clearly displayed only to be redirected to the hospitality staff check-in by a security guard who hadn't bothered to read her badge. When she'd politely corrected him, his response had been loaded with doubt. You're sure you're not with catering? 3 white male executives had witnessed the exchange without intervening. One had later approached her to commend her calm handling of the situation, as if her restraint in the face of prejudice rather than the prejudice itself was noteworthy. The memory dissolved as Rebecca returned to the cabin. She still wore her professional mask, but beneath it, Olivia detected something darker, resentment crystallizing into determination. Whatever was coming next would be more deliberate, less deniable. Olivia's watch vibrated with a subtle alert. Heart rate elevated, a physiological response to stress that belied her calm exterior. She took a deep breath, centering herself. Years of boardroom battles had taught her to maintain composure under pressure, to recognize when others were attempting to provoke an emotional reaction. Michael Ramirez passed through the cabin distributing hot towels before the meal service. When he reached Olivia's row, he offered a genuine smile along with the towel. Ms. Banks? He said quietly. It's an honor to have you on board. My brother uses your speech recognition software in his medical practice. It's changed how he documents patient care. The simple, authentic acknowledgement stood in stark contrast to Rebecca's behavior. Olivia returned his smile. Thank you for sharing that. We designed it specifically to help healthcare providers spend more time with patients. Their brief exchange was interrupted by Rebecca's return. She carried dinner menus for the first-class cabin, but paused at the sight of Michael conversing with Olivia. Michael, she said sharply. We need you in the galley to prepare for meal service. He straightened immediately. Of course. Right away. With an apologetic glance toward Olivia, he retreated to the front. Rebecca distributed menus to the other passengers first, leaving Olivia for last. When she finally approached 2A, her smile had cooled to professional minimum. "Our executive chef has prepared several options for tonight's dinner service," she explained, voice carrying for the benefit of nearby passengers. "Though I should mention the filet mignon is quite sophisticated. Perhaps something simpler might be more suitable. The suggestion that Olivia might not appreciate fine dining hung in the air like smoke. "I'll have the filet," Olivia replied evenly. "Medium rare." Rebecca nodded stiffly. "Very good." She turned to James. "And for you, sir?" "The same," he replied, not looking up from his laptop, "though I'd appreciate if service could be professional and non-discriminatory for all passengers." Rebecca froze momentarily, her composure cracking before she recovered. "I'm not sure what you're implying, sir." "I think we both know exactly what I'm implying," James responded, his tone mild but firm. From seat 4C, the observant man in the gray suit watched the exchange with calculated interest. Though he hadn't spoken during the flight, his attention seemed particularly focused on the interactions involving Olivia and Rebecca. As Rebecca moved away, Olivia's phone lit up with a notification. Despite airplane mode being activated, a message had somehow pushed through. A capability that reflected Horizon Technologies' advanced communication protocols live feed established. Board receiving real-time updates. Proceed as you see fit. The message confirmed what Olivia had suspected. Her team had established a secure connection to monitor the situation. The knowledge settled like armor around her shoulders. Whatever happened next would be documented beyond the confines of the aircraft. In the galley, Rebecca engaged in heated whispers with Nicole, who appeared increasingly uncomfortable with the conversation. Michael Ramirez stood slightly apart, his professional demeanor intact, but his eyes reflecting concern as he prepared the dinner service trolley. The man in 4C, positioned to observe the galley, made a subtle gesture with his right hand, adjusting his tie while establishing brief eye contact with Olivia. The movement was casual but deliberate, communicating an unspoken message. "I see what's happening." Sophia leaned forward again. "This is blowing up online," she whispered. "Someone recognized you from my earlier posts. The hashtag respect in the skies is trending." Olivia nodded slightly, maintaining her composed exterior while internally evaluating her options. The situation was escalating toward a tipping point, the moment when subtle discrimination would either retreat behind plausible deniability or emerge fully into the open. As the dinner service began, Rebecca returned to Olivia's seat. "Ms. Banks, I need to inform you that we've had a special request from another passenger. They've expressed discomfort and asked if you could be moved to business class. We'd be happy to accommodate this with a partial refund." The cabin fell silent, the request so blatantly inappropriate that even uninvolved passengers looked up in shock. Olivia met Rebecca's gaze directly. "No," she said simply. The single word, firm, clear, and unequivocal, seemed to echo in the hushed cabin. Rebecca's smile faltered. "I'm sorry I said no," Olivia repeated. "I purchased this seat. I'm sitting in this seat. That's not a request or a negotiation." The standoff had begun. "Perhaps you misunderstand the situation," Rebecca said, her voice taking on a harder edge while maintaining a thin veneer of professionalism. "When a passenger expresses discomfort, it's our policy to address their concerns." Olivia remained perfectly still, her expression neutral but resolute. "And which passenger has expressed this concern?" Rebecca hesitated, caught in the directness of the question. "I'm not at liberty to say." "Because no such passenger exists," James Rodriguez interjected from 2B, closing his laptop. "This is a fabrication designed to remove Ms. Banks from first class without admitting the actual motivation." Rebecca's face flushed slightly. "Sir, this doesn't concern you." It concerns everyone who believes in fair treatment. James countered, his voice calm but carrying authority. As an attorney specializing in discrimination cases, I'm particularly sensitive to patterns of biased behavior. The revelation of his profession sent a visible ripple through Rebecca's composure. She straightened, gathering herself. I need to speak with the captain. Please excuse me. As she retreated to the cockpit, a murmur spread through the first-class cabin. The earlier tension had crystallized into something unmistakable. Passengers exchanging glances, some uncomfortable, others outraged. Sophia leaned forward again. This is unbelievable, she whispered. I've seen subtle discrimination on flights before, but nothing this blatant. Olivia remained composed, though her mind worked through scenarios with the strategic precision that had built her company. This moment had transcended personal insult. It had become a clear example of the barriers still facing people of color in spaces designed for exclusivity. The cockpit door opened. Captain Thomas Peterson emerged, his expression grave as he approached Olivia's seat. Rebecca followed a step behind, her posture suggesting victory. Ms. Banks, the captain began formally. I understand there's been some confusion about seating arrangements. There's no confusion, Captain Olivia replied evenly. I purchased a first-class ticket which has been verified twice. Now your lead flight attendant is suggesting I move to accommodate an unnamed passenger's discomfort with my presence. Captain Peterson's eyes narrowed slightly. He glanced at Rebecca, then back to Olivia. May I see your boarding pass one more time, please? Without comment, Olivia produced the black titanium card. The captain examined it, then scanned it with a handheld device. The confirmation tone beeped clearly. Your ticket is valid, he confirmed. There's no legitimate reason for you to be relocated. Rebecca stepped forward. Captain, the issue isn't the validity of the ticket. It's about maintaining the atmosphere our premium passengers expect. And what atmosphere is that? The captain asked, his tone sharpening. One where certain passengers are removed based on arbitrary criteria. Rebecca faltered. That's not what Miss Wilson, the captain interrupted. A word in the galley. His tone left no room for argument. As they stepped away, James Rodriguez leaned slightly toward Olivia. This is escalating beyond the usual microaggressions. Are you documenting this? Olivia gave a barely perceptible nod, her right hand briefly touching her watch. In the galley, the captain's voice remained low but carried enough for nearby passengers to hear fragments, completely unacceptable, and violation of company policy. Rebecca's responses were equally fragmented, maintaining standards, and not typical first class. As Olivia watched this exchange, a memory surfaced. Her first board meeting as CEO, when an older investor had repeatedly directed his comments to her male CFO despite her clear role as the company's founder and leader. When she'd finally interrupted to assert her position, he'd replied with patronizing amusement. Well, aren't you feisty for such a pretty young thing? The room had fallen silent, other board members shifting uncomfortably but saying nothing. She'd fixed him with a level gaze and replied, I'm not feisty, Mr. Harrison. I'm the CEO of this company and you're speaking to the wrong person. He'd been removed from the board within a month. The memory faded as the captain returned to the cabin, addressing the first-class passengers collectively. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for any disruption to your journey. Aurora Airlines is committed to providing excellent service to all passengers. I've instructed the crew to proceed with normal service. If anyone has concerns about their flight experience, please direct them to me personally. The message was clear. The captain had overruled Rebecca's actions, at least temporarily. As he returned to the cockpit, Rebecca emerged from the galley, her expression tightly controlled. Nicole and Michael followed, resuming dinner preparations with professional focus. The man in seat 4C, who had observed the entire interaction, made a subtle movement with his hand as if sending a text message. Though his actions were discreet, his attention remained fixed on the developing situation. Rebecca approached Olivia once more. "Your meal will be served shortly," she said, voice flat and devoid of warmth. "The captain has asked me to ensure your flight is comfortable." The words carried no sincerity, only forced compliance. "Thank you," Olivia replied simply. As Rebecca moved to other passengers, Sophia whispered from behind, "This isn't over. She's just regrouping." "I know," Olivia acknowledged quietly. Years of corporate battles had taught her to recognize when an opponent was simply changing tactics rather than conceding defeat. Nicole approached with the first course, a delicate salad with candied walnuts and aged balsamic. "Ms. Banks," she said softly as she placed the dish, "I want you to know that not all of us—" She paused, glancing toward the galley where Rebecca watched. "Some of us believe in treating every passenger with dignity." The whispered alliance was unexpected, but welcome. Olivia nodded in acknowledgement as Nicole continued her service. Dinner proceeded without immediate incident, though the atmosphere remained charged with unresolved tension. Rebecca maintained minimal interaction with Olivia, delivering the bare requirements of service with cold efficiency. As the meal service concluded, James Rodriguez excused himself to use the lavatory. While he was away, Rebecca returned to Olivia's seat. "I hope the meal was satisfactory," she said, her professional mask firmly in place. "It was fine, thank you," Olivia replied. Rebecca lingered, her voice dropping to ensure nearby passengers couldn't overhear. "You know, making a scene doesn't change anything. Some spaces have traditions and expectations that exist for a reason." "And what reason would that be?" Olivia asked, meeting her gaze directly. "Standards," Rebecca answered. "Not everyone understands the refinement our regular passengers expect." "I understand perfectly," Olivia countered, her voice equally low. "I understand that standards is often code for exclusion, and tradition frequently masks prejudice." Rebecca's expression hardened. "You can make this about race if you want, but this is about behavior and belonging." "No," Olivia said firmly. "This is about power and your misuse of it. But make no mistake, your power on this aircraft is temporary. Mine extends far beyond this flight." Something in Olivia's tone, the quiet certainty, the absence of both anger and fear, caused Rebecca to hesitate. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. "Is that a threat?" she asked. "It's a fact," Olivia replied simply. Before Rebecca could respond, James returned to his seat, breaking the tension of the moment. Rebecca retreated to the galley where she engaged in hushed conversation with Michael, gesturing occasionally toward Olivia's seat. Olivia's watch vibrated with another secure notification: corporate security standing by at LAX. Evidence being compiled. Board chair requesting directive on next steps. The message confirmed what Olivia had already decided: this incident would not be ignored or smoothed over. The pattern of behavior demonstrated by Rebecca Wilson reflected broader issues that required addressing at an institutional level. From behind, Sophia leaned forward once more. "My live stream has over 50,000 viewers now," she whispered. "People are demanding Aurora Airlines make a statement." The revelation that Sophia had been live streaming, not just recording, shifted the dynamics significantly. What had begun as a private confrontation had become public, with real-time witnesses across the digital landscape. The man in 4C stood and approached the galley, engaging Rebecca in conversation. Though his words weren't audible, his posture and Rebecca's suddenly attentive stance suggested authority. After a brief exchange, he returned to his seat, making deliberate eye contact with Olivia as he passed. The message was clear: another player had entered the game, though their role remained undefined. As the aircraft continued its journey westward, the confrontation entered a temporary lull, the calm before what promised to be a much larger storm. While the cabin settled into an uneasy calm, the true scope of what was unfolding remained invisible to most passengers. Olivia's seemingly simple text notification, "We're monitoring live," represented a sophisticated response protocol years in the making. In Horizon Technologies' New York headquarters, Amanda Foster had assembled a crisis management team the moment the first reports of discrimination reached her. The company's secure conference room had transformed into a command center with multiple screens displaying data feeds from Olivia's smart devices. Heart rate elevated but stable reported a technician monitoring Olivia's watch data. Voice stress analysis indicates she's maintaining composure despite significant provocation. Amanda nodded her attention, divided between the biometric readouts and the social media explosion triggered by Sophia's live stream. At 40, Amanda carried herself with the focused efficiency of someone who anticipated problems before they emerged. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail as she directed the team's response. "Daniel, what's our legal position?" she asked, turning to Daniel Martinez, Horizon's chief counsel. Daniel adjusted his glasses, reviewing documents on his tablet. "Rock solid. We've documented multiple instances of discriminatory behavior. The cabin recordings alone provide sufficient evidence for action against both the individual employee and potentially the airline itself." And security Amanda directed her question to Jamal Wilson, head of Horizon's protection detail. Team expanded at LAX. Jamal confirmed, his voice calm but authoritative. 6 personnel positioned at arrival gate, 2 more coordinating with airport police. Aurora Airlines security has also made contact with Olivia. Their representative Richard Taylor is on board. Amanda processed the information, mentally calculating next steps. And the Aurora Airlines board. Initial contact established, Daniel reported. They're in emergency session. Their general counsel reached out 15 minutes ago requesting dialogue. Declined for now, Amanda verified. As per protocol, Daniel confirmed. We maintain information advantage until Olivia directs otherwise. The team's coordinated response reflected years of strategic planning. As a black female CEO in the tech industry, Olivia had encountered enough discrimination to recognize patterns and prepare accordingly. What appeared to outsiders as simple text messages represented a sophisticated system designed to transform individual incidents of bias into moments of institutional accountability. Social media update called an analyst from the digital monitoring station. Hashtag respect in the skies, now trending nationally. Major news outlets picking up the story. Aurora Airlines stock down 3% in after-hours trading. Amanda nodded, unsurprised by the rapid escalation. Prepare the statement templates. We'll customize based on how this concludes. The operation reflected Olivia's leadership philosophy: meticulous preparation, strategic patience, and proportional response. Throughout her career, she had encountered powerful figures who mistook her composure for weakness, only to discover too late the precision of her counterstrikes. Back on the aircraft, Olivia appeared to be simply reviewing documents on her tablet. In reality, she was monitoring the secure feed from her crisis team, tracking developments while maintaining her outward calm. A memory surfaced as she worked. Her grandmother's voice, clear and firm despite the decades since her passing. "Never let them see you sweat, baby." Some fights are won with fists up high, but the most important ones are won with your spine straight and your mind sharper than they can imagine. The wisdom had guided Olivia through countless boardrooms and venture capital meetings where she'd been the only woman of color present. Today, it served her again in this pressurized cabin where the same patterns played out in microcosm. At the front of the aircraft, Rebecca Wilson huddled with Nicole Anderson, their hushed conversation punctuated by Rebecca's sharp gestures. Though Rebecca maintained physical distance from Olivia's seat, her frequent glances carried unmistakable hostility. James Rodriguez worked quietly beside Olivia, occasionally making notes on legal letterhead. Without looking up, he murmured, "Whatever you have planned, I'd be happy to offer pro bono support. Cases like this matter beyond the individual incident." "I appreciate that," Olivia replied, "though I suspect this will resolve rather quickly once we land." James raised an eyebrow but didn't press further, recognizing the quiet confidence of someone with resources already in motion. From 4C, Richard Taylor maintained his vigilant observation, his attention now divided between Rebecca and his secure phone, which occasionally lit up with messages from Aurora Airlines executives. The aircraft began its initial descent into Los Angeles airspace. Captain Peterson's voice came over the intercom announcing their approach and requesting flight attendants to prepare the cabin for landing. Rebecca moved through the first-class section, performing safety checks with mechanical efficiency. When she reached Olivia's row, her professional mask slipped momentarily, revealing naked resentment before she continued down the aisle without speaking. Sophia leaned forward from 3A. "She's still furious," she whispered. "My live stream just passed 100,000 viewers. People are speculating about what happens when we land. They won't have to wait long to find out." Olivia replied, her expression revealing nothing of the precisely orchestrated response awaiting at Los Angeles International Airport. As the aircraft descended through the clouds, Olivia's watch vibrated with a final secure notification. Board Chair Victoria Lawrence arriving at LAX personally. Full executive team standing by. Proceed with option 4. Olivia sent a single-character response, "Why?" The confirmation set in motion the most comprehensive accountability protocol in Horizon's playbook. A response designed not merely to address an individual incident, but to create lasting institutional change. The Los Angeles skyline appeared through the windows as Flight 782 continued its approach. In the galley, Rebecca conferred briefly with Michael Ramirez, who nodded reluctantly before approaching Olivia's seat. "Ms. Banks," he said professionally, "Ms. Wilson has asked me to inform you that she'll need to speak with you after landing regarding a customer service matter." Olivia noted the discomfort in his expression. Clearly, he had been sent as a proxy to deliver a message he disagreed with. "Thank you, Michael," she replied warmly. "Please let Ms. Wilson know I'll be unavailable after landing due to prior commitments. But Aurora Airlines executives are welcome to contact my team." The response, indicating awareness of executive involvement, caused Michael's eyes to widen slightly before he composed his expression. "I'll let her know," he said, returning to the galley where Rebecca received his message with visible displeasure. The aircraft's landing gear deployed with a mechanical thud. Los Angeles International Airport spread out below, bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. As the runway approached, Olivia closed her eyes briefly, centering herself for what would come next. The wheels touched down with a screech of rubber on concrete. Captain Peterson's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Los Angeles. Local time is 4:45 p.m. with clear skies and 75 degrees. Please remain seated with seatbelts fastened until we reach the gate and the seatbelt sign is turned off." As the aircraft taxied toward Terminal 4, Olivia's phone connected to the local network. Messages populated her screen, immediately confirming that everything was in place. The plane docked at Gate 42B. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Passengers began gathering belongings, but before anyone could stand, Captain Peterson's voice returned with an unusual announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we ask that you remain seated momentarily. We'll be boarding several representatives from Aurora Airlines management before beginning general deplaning. Thank you for your patience." The unexpected announcement sent a ripple of curiosity through the cabin. Rebecca stood rigid in the galley, her expression shifting from confusion to alarm as the jet bridge connected and the aircraft door swung open. 3 figures entered the first-class cabin. A distinguished woman in her late 50s with silver-streaked dark hair and an unmistakable aura of authority, flanked by 2 serious-looking men in corporate attire. Richard Taylor rose immediately from 4C, approaching the group and speaking in hushed tones while gesturing subtly toward both Olivia and Rebecca. The silver-haired woman nodded once, then proceeded directly to Olivia's seat. "Ms. Banks," she said, extending her hand. "Victoria Lawrence, chairwoman of Aurora Airlines. I believe we have some matters to discuss." Ms. Lawrence Olivia acknowledged, accepting the handshake with composed professionalism. I appreciate your prompt attention to the situation. Victoria Lawrence carried herself with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to wielding authority. Her tailored navy suit and minimal jewelry spoke of understated power, while her direct gaze conveyed serious purpose. Beneath her polished exterior, Olivia detected subtle signs of stress, tension around her eyes, and a slight tightness in her smile, indicating she understood the gravity of the unfolding crisis. On behalf of Aurora Airlines, I want to personally apologize for your experience today. Victoria stated, her voice pitched to carry throughout the first-class cabin. What you've encountered is completely unacceptable and contradicts our stated values as an organization. Rebecca Wilson stood frozen in the galley, her face draining of color as she registered the presence of the airline's board chairwoman addressing a passenger she had spent the flight attempting to intimidate. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the counter behind her, the first visible crack in her composed facade. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private, Olivia suggested, gathering her belongings. Victoria nodded. We have a conference room prepared in our premium lounge. My team will escort you there directly. As they spoke, one of Victoria's accompanying executives approached Rebecca, speaking in low, firm tones. Rebecca's posture stiffened defensively, her voice rising just enough for nearby passengers to catch fragments, following procedures, and maintaining standards. The executive shook his head, cutting her off mid-sentence. He handed her a document, which she stared at in visible shock before looking up to meet Olivia's gaze across the cabin. For the first time, genuine fear replaced the condescension in Rebecca's expression, the dawning recognition that she had seriously misjudged the passenger in 2A. Her confident mask crumbled entirely as she realized the power dynamics had reversed completely. This can't, she whispered just loudly enough for those nearby to hear. They told us to maintain standards. It wasn't personal. The broken fragments revealed something Olivia had suspected. Rebecca's behavior reflected institutional guidance rather than merely individual prejudice. The realization confirmed the need for structural accountability beyond addressing a single employee's actions. James Rodriguez stood offering his business card to Victoria. James Rodriguez, civil rights attorney. I witnessed the entire incident and would be happy to provide a formal statement. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Victoria replied, accepting the card. Our legal team will be in touch. Sophia Gonzalez remained seated, her live stream still active. Ms. Lawrence, she called. Sophia Gonzalez, travel journalist. Over 150,000 people have been watching this unfold. Would you care to make a statement regarding Aurora Airlines' response to discrimination? The question, pointed and public, created a moment of tension. Victoria considered briefly before responding with measured clarity. Aurora Airlines categorically condemns discriminatory behavior. We're taking immediate action regarding today's incident, including a thorough investigation and appropriate consequences. We're committed to ensuring all passengers receive respectful, equitable treatment, regardless of race, gender, or background. The carefully crafted statement acknowledged the issue without admitting specific liability, a board chair's necessary balance between accountability and risk management. Olivia rose from her seat, carry-on in hand, as she prepared to exit with Victoria's team. Rebecca suddenly broke away from the executive, approaching with desperate determination. Ms. Banks, she said, her voice strained. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was simply following protocols for passenger verification. Ms. Wilson, Victoria interrupted sharply. You've been instructed not to engage with passengers. Please comply immediately. Rebecca's composure cracked entirely. You don't understand. She's twisting everything. I was maintaining the standards you yourself established for first-class service. The outburst, public and unprofessional, created a ripple of uncomfortable silence throughout the cabin. Other passengers exchanged glances, many continuing to record the unfolding scene. "That's enough," Victoria stated firmly. "Return to the crew area now." Instead of complying, Rebecca turned to face the cabin at large, her professional demeanor completely abandoned. "This is ridiculous. One passenger complains and suddenly we're all racist. I've been with this airline for 12 years. I know what our premium passengers expect." The declaration hung in the air, damning in its implication that premium passengers expected discriminatory treatment of certain travelers. Her next words emerged as if torn from somewhere deep and desperate. "I didn't create these standards. We were trained this way. There's a whole manual on passenger profile management. They never put in writing. Ask any senior flight attendant." The confession, delivered in public panic, revealed institutional structures far beyond Rebecca's individual actions. Several passengers gasped audibly. Victoria's expression darkened with recognition that this crisis extended beyond one employee. "And what exactly do they expect, Ms. Wilson?" Olivia asked, her voice calm but penetrating. "That people who look like me will be questioned, relocated, or removed to maintain your vision of first-class standards." Rebecca faltered, suddenly aware of how her words sounded in the silent watching cabin. "That's not what I meant." "I think it's precisely what you meant," Olivia countered. "The problem isn't that I misunderstood your actions. It's that I understood them perfectly." The exchange triggered a flashback for Olivia, an investor meeting 8 years earlier where a venture capitalist had suggested she might be more comfortable with less ambitious funding goals. She had recognized the coded language then, just as she recognized Rebecca's now. Rebecca's voice dropped to a desperate whisper. "You have no idea what they'll do to me. I have bills, a mortgage. This job is all I have." For a brief moment, Olivia glimpsed the human vulnerability beneath the discriminatory behavior, not as excuse but as context. Rebecca's actions reflected a system that rewarded conformity to biased expectations while punishing those who questioned them. Victoria gestured to security personnel who had entered from the jet bridge. "Please escort Ms. Wilson to the administrative offices. Her security clearances are temporarily suspended pending review." As the security team approached, Rebecca's desperation peaked. "You can't do this. I haven't done anything wrong." "We have video evidence suggesting otherwise," Victoria replied coolly. "Multiple passengers have recorded your interactions which clearly violate our non-discrimination policies." Rebecca's gaze darted wildly around the cabin, landing on the various phones, still documenting the scene. "This is a setup." She came looking for trouble. The accusation, openly hostile and baseless, marked the complete abandonment of professional pretense. Passengers murmured in shock at the display. "Ms. Wilson," Olivia said quietly, "I came looking for a flight to Los Angeles. You're the one who turned it into something else entirely." The simple truth landed with undeniable weight. Rebecca's shoulders sagged as security personnel reached her position. "This isn't over," she muttered as they escorted her toward the exit. "People like you are ruining everything. You don't even understand what first class is supposed to be." As she passed near Olivia, Rebecca's mask fell completely. Her voice dropped to a whisper only Olivia could hear. "You think you've won? They'll just find someone else to do the same job with better discretion. Nothing changes." The parting comment, revealing both Rebecca's bitterness and her awareness of larger institutional issues, echoed through the cabin as she disappeared down the jet bridge. Victoria turned to the remaining passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Aurora Airlines, I sincerely apologize for this disruption. Our customer service team will be contacting each of you personally regarding compensation for today's experience. Thank you for your patience and understanding." As the regular deplaning process began, Victoria guided Olivia toward the exit. In the jet bridge, they were met by Amanda Foster and Jamal Wilson, who had positioned themselves strategically to intercept Olivia upon arrival. "Everything's prepared," Amanda informed her quietly. The full board is assembled in Conference Room A. Legal has drafted initial documents as instructed. Victoria raised an eyebrow, clearly recognizing that Olivia's response team had mobilized with remarkable efficiency. "You came prepared for this outcome," she observed. "I came prepared for any outcome," Olivia corrected, including the possibility of a constructive dialogue about institutional change. The subtle redirection, from individual incident to organizational responsibility, signaled Olivia's true objective. This wasn't merely about one flight attendant's behavior, but about the environment that had enabled it. As they proceeded through the terminal, Sofia Gonzalez caught up with them, her live stream still active. "Ms. Banks," she called. "My audience is asking what happens next. Is this the end of the story?" Olivia paused, considering the young journalist whose documentation had helped transform an individual experience into a public reckoning. "No, Ms. Gonzalez," she replied. "This isn't the end. It's just the beginning of necessary change." The statement, delivered with quiet conviction, promised more significant developments to come. As their group continued toward the premium lounge, Victoria Lawrence's expression reflected growing recognition that she was dealing with someone who viewed this incident not as a personal grievance to be settled, but as a structural issue requiring comprehensive reform. The breaking point had been reached, not just for Rebecca Wilson's career, but potentially for Aurora Airlines' entire approach to equity and inclusion. 6 months after Flight 782 landed at Los Angeles International Airport, Olivia Banks boarded another Aurora Airlines flight, first-class seat 2A New York to Los Angeles. The symmetry was deliberate, a full-circle moment to experience firsthand the changes implemented since that February confrontation. The terminal experience immediately reflected transformation. Check-in procedures had been standardized across passenger demographics, with consistent verification protocols replacing the discretionary approaches that had enabled discrimination. First-class boarding announcements emphasized all first-class passengers, rather than the subtle qualifiers previously used to signal exclusivity. As Olivia approached the gate, she recognized Nicole Anderson, now Aurora's head of service equity, overseeing the boarding process with quiet professionalism. "Ms. Banks." Nicole greeted her warmly. "Welcome back to Aurora Airlines. It's an honor to have you with us again." The simple courtesy, delivered with genuine respect rather than the artificial deference or suspicious scrutiny she had previously encountered, captured the fundamental shift in service approach. This wasn't special treatment, but the standard respect now extended to all passengers regardless of demographic profile. Boarding proceeded smoothly, with flight attendants greeting each passenger with consistent courtesy. In the first-class cabin, the atmosphere reflected inclusive luxury rather than exclusionary privilege, the subtle but significant difference Olivia had advocated throughout the reform process. As she settled into seat 2A, memories of that February confrontation briefly surfaced. Rebecca Wilson's skeptical scrutiny, the spilled champagne, the attempt to relocate her to business class. The contrast with today's experience couldn't have been more profound. Michael Ramirez, who had shown Olivia basic courtesy during the original flight, now served as the lead first-class attendant. His greeting carried professional warmth without any hint of the hesitation previously evident when navigating contradictory expectations. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Banks," he said simply. "May I offer you champagne or sparkling water before departure?" The normality of the interaction, unremarkable in its consistency with how other passengers were being treated, represented exactly the change Olivia had sought. Not special accommodation, but equal treatment delivered with genuine hospitality, rather than suspicious scrutiny. As the aircraft pushed back from the gate, Olivia reviewed notes for her upcoming presentation at the National Transportation Equity Conference. Her keynote would address the industry-wide transformations of the past 6 months, not just policy revisions, but cultural shifts in assumptions about belonging in premium spaces. The data was compelling. Discrimination complaints across major carriers had decreased by 67% since implementation of standardized service protocols. Customer satisfaction metrics showed improvement across demographic groups, including the frequent first-class travelers previously assumed to prefer exclusionary environments. Beyond statistical improvements, personal testimonials reflected deeper transformation. Travelers, previously subject to regular questioning and scrutiny, now reported consistent respect and recognition, particularly in premium contexts, where exclusionary practices had been most prevalent. What had begun as one confrontation on one flight had catalyzed changes affecting hundreds of thousands of travelers across the global transportation industry. The ripple effects continued expanding, with hotels, cruise lines, and exclusive venues reconsidering protocols that had enabled similar discrimination. As Flight 782 reached cruising altitude, Olivia gazed out the window at clouds stretching toward the horizon. 6 months earlier, she had looked through this same window with tension coiled between her shoulders, anticipating the confrontation that discriminatory treatment inevitably triggered. Today, she sat with the quiet confidence of someone who had not only claimed her own belonging, but helped create space for countless others to do the same. The transformation wasn't complete. Cultural change never is. But the direction had been irrevocably altered. Mid-flight, a young woman approached from several rows back, hesitating briefly before speaking. "Ms. Banks, I'm sorry to disturb you, but I wanted to thank you personally. I'm Alicia Fernandez. I wrote to you about my experience on a Phoenix flight last year." Olivia smiled in recognition. "Of course, I remember your letter. Please join me for a moment." Alicia sat briefly in the adjacent seat. "I just wanted you to know, I've flown 4 times since the changes were implemented. Not once have I been asked to verify my ticket after boarding or had my belonging in first class questioned. It's—" her voice caught slightly. "It's what should have been normal all along." The simple testimony, one of hundreds Olivia had received over the past 6 months, captured the profound impact of structural change on individual experience. This wasn't about corporate policies or legal compliance, but about human dignity recognized and respected in everyday interactions. "That's exactly what this was always about," Olivia acknowledged. "Not special treatment, just consistent respect, regardless of what you look like or whether you match someone's expectations of who belongs in these spaces." After Alicia returned to her seat, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The confrontation on Flight 782 hadn't been planned, but her response to it had drawn on decades of experience navigating exclusionary spaces with strategic clarity rather than either accommodation or unfocused outrage. Throughout her career, building Horizon Technologies, she had encountered countless moments of questioning doubt and dismissal. Each had presented a choice between silent endurance and exhausting confrontation, neither offering real resolution to the underlying patterns. The difference now was in having the resources and platform to address structural barriers rather than merely navigating them individually. That shift, from personal strategy to institutional accountability, had transformed a single confrontation into a catalyst for industry-wide change. As the aircraft began its descent into Los Angeles, Olivia received a message from Victoria Lawrence confirming their meeting the following morning. Aurora Airlines' implementation of equitable service standards had become a model for the industry, with Victoria regularly consulting with other carriers adopting similar reforms. Their partnership, unexpected but remarkably effective, demonstrated how accountability could lead to collaboration rather than merely adversarial relationships. Victoria had transformed potential corporate crisis into opportunity for meaningful leadership, establishing Aurora as the industry standard for inclusive excellence. The wheels touched down at Los Angeles International Airport with the same mechanical thud Olivia had experienced 6 months earlier. But everything surrounding that physical similarity had changed profoundly, from boarding procedures to in-flight service to the underlying assumptions about who belonged in premium spaces. As passengers prepared to deplane, Michael Ramirez made a brief announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Captain Phillips and our entire crew, thank you for choosing Aurora Airlines. We're committed to providing exceptional service to every passenger on every flight. The simple statement, with emphasis on every passenger, reflected the airline's revised mission following the revelations triggered by Flight 782. Excellence through inclusion had replaced exclusivity as the defining standard for premium service. Olivia gathered her belongings, exchanging pleasant farewells with the crew as she exited. In the terminal, a digital display caught her attention. Aurora Airlines' new advertisement featuring diverse travelers in first-class contexts with the tagline, "Excellence isn't exclusive. It's how we treat everyone." The message captured the fundamental shift Olivia had advocated throughout the transformation process, recognizing that true quality service enhanced experience for all passengers, rather than creating artificial hierarchies among them. As she walked through the terminal toward ground transportation, Olivia passed the exact spot where she had met Victoria Lawrence 6 months earlier during that first confrontation. The memory triggered not bitterness, but appreciation for how challenging moments could become catalysts for meaningful change when approached with strategic clarity and uncompromising purpose. The journey that had begun with a single question about belonging had transformed into an industry-wide reckoning with exclusionary practices disguised as standards. What Rebecca Wilson and others had failed to recognize was that questioning Olivia's presence in first class wasn't merely a personal insult, but reflection of structural patterns affecting countless travelers. The power to address those patterns, not just navigate them individually, represented the true privilege Olivia had earned through her success. Not exemption from discrimination, but the capacity to challenge its underlying structures effectively. As she exited the terminal into brilliant California sunshine, Olivia carried that understanding as both responsibility and opportunity. The work wasn't finished. Cultural transformation never is. But the direction had been irrevocably altered toward greater inclusion and accountability. The true measure of success wasn't in policy revisions or public recognition, but in the thousands of travelers who now moved through premium spaces without having their belonging questioned or their presence treated as exceptional. That shift, from exclusion to inclusion, from suspicion to respect, represented the most meaningful outcome of the confrontation that had begun 6 months earlier on Flight 782. For Olivia Banks, the journey continued, not as victim or symbol, but as strategic advocate for transformation that extended far beyond her individual experience. The quiet dignity that had guided her response to discrimination had become the foundation for structural change affecting countless others previously subject to the same patterns. Sometimes true power revealed itself not in loud confrontation, but in composed determination that transformed individual moments into catalysts for lasting change. That was the lesson of Flight 782, and the legacy Olivia carried forward into whatever challenges awaited beyond this arrival. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button right now. Share your own experiences in the comments below. Have you ever had to stand your ground in the face of discrimination? How did you handle it? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our powerful, true stories of resilience and justice. Remember to share this video with someone who needs to hear that standing up with dignity can change not just one moment but entire systems. The power to transform our world begins with refusing to accept anything less than the respect we all deserve.